I mean, we didn't deal with the pill crisis and not talk to doctors and pharmacists. We can't deal with an illicit drug crisis and not talk to people who sell drugs. It doesn't make any sense. But I was already in Greensboro, North Carolina, giving out syringes, and Dan was sending them to me. And we had a group of people that they were doing it, but it was completely illegal, and it didn't look like what it looks like now. I mean, we were breaking the law, getting arrested, giving out syringes, and driving people naloxone when they called us and said, "Oh my God, somebody has overdosed, please come." The problem is, drug war doesn't ever stop. Like, there's no 9 to 5. Like, there's no time where I sit down and I'm like, well, we solved that. Like, I'm afraid if liberation came, I might not even notice it. I'd still be fighting.
You're listening to Narcotica, a podcast giving you the straight dope about drugs and the people who use them.
Imagine yourself driving down a cold and foggy, dark road at night. A deer jumps in front of your path and you spin off the road trying to avoid it and crash into a tree. Luckily, a passerby saves your life and rushes you to the hospital. You are losing gallons of blood and need a transfusion fast. But the particular hospital where you wind up has a serious technical problem. The equipment that's needed for them to determine your blood type is down. This will require them to rely on subjective personal information in order to figure out the right blood type. You quickly tell them that you are 100% positive that your blood type is A, that you've interacted with healthcare enough to know this, and that you've had your blood tested. You assure them that this is the type of blood you need, and expect them to give it to you. Instead of taking your word for it, the nurses run off to grab the doctor. They say, "We need an expert opinion on the blood type of this patient." The doctor rushes in, and after taking a close look at your eyes and ears, he declares, "This patient has type B blood." As a result of your continued protests, the blood is not given to you, and instead, the nurses run to another part of the hospital looking for a different expert. This time they bring in a paramedic who works in the field and deals regularly with different types of blood. This paramedic takes a close look in your ears and looks in your eyes and says, "This person is obviously a type B blood." Now by this time you've become incredibly frustrated, you're acting a little bit angry and irate, and you're telling them, "Look, if you guys don't give me the right kind of blood, you're going to kill me. This is not a game." So eventually the nurses cave in and they decide to get a third opinion. This time they say, "We will figure out the true type of your blood." They send for the local university and bring in a researcher who knows everything there is to know about blood types. The researcher takes a close look at your skin, your eyes, your hair, your nails, and every part of your body and tells you that you obviously have type O positive blood. Just imagine the frustration and anger that you'd be experiencing as carts of O positive blood were wheeled in to give you in transfusion. This type of thing is exactly what people who use drugs experience on a daily basis. The U.S. is experiencing the worst rates of drug deaths in its history, and yet we continue to consult everyone but people who use drugs in seeking for answers. Is it any wonder, then, that the problem continues to get worse? By now, you're probably wondering to yourself, who the hell are you, and what have you done with Troy? Well, don't worry, Troy's not gone. He just happens to be moving everything he owns from one state to another. And while Troy settles in Illinois, I'm filling in. This is Aaron Ferguson, a co-producer of the show. Today's episode is a special one, and we will be hosting Louise Vincent. Louise is the executive director of the National Survivors Union. Her conversation with Chris, Troy, and Zach is one of the better ones we've had on this show, and we've been trying to get Louise on for quite some time. We're excited to bring you this conversation from a person who has transformed drug user organizing to a more informed and feminist-oriented approach. We greatly appreciate your participation with and support of our show, and we want to continue to bring you quality content. We hope you enjoy this conversation and find it engaging, and we look forward to connecting with you at the next episode.
I'm Troy Farah, and you're listening to Narcotica. Our guest today is Louise Vincent, director of the NC Survivors Union in North Carolina, and on the leadership team of the National Drug User Union, an organization of former and active drug users who have come together to provide services for a community that is underrepresented and underserved. Louise has a lot of firsthand knowledge of the communities that sell and use drugs and works to educate this community regarding harm reduction. Also with us today is Zachary Siegel, beaming from Chicago, Illinois. Say hi, Zach.
Hello.
And Chris Moraff from Philly. How are you doing, Chris?
Hey. Hey-o.
Louise, welcome to the show.
Oh, I'm grateful to be here. I think this is a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you. We've been trying to get you on the show for, I think, about a year now, and I know there's been a lot going on with all of us, so it's just great to have you here.
Yeah, I was just explaining that things have been really hard for a lot of the folks in the union. Many of us went to Puerto Rico, and almost at least half of the people that I am close with that are in the union got COVID, while they were there. And so it was the second time I got COVID. So that was really rough. And especially really rough in light of my desire to hear more about drug user health, because I happen to be one of the people that has a lot of struggle due to drug policy, hospital policy, the way we treat people who use drugs. And I'm a person with enormous privilege. And so if I can't get the help I need, then we're looking at major problems.
Louise, you were talking a little bit about the harm reduction conference in Puerto Rico. And I was sort of saying, like, I don't want to gossip or spread rumors or anything, but, I was unable to make it because I was, obviously afraid of getting COVID. I'm just really trying to avoid that as much as possible. And unfortunately, I heard a lot of people got sick from it, but I hope it was worth it. What would you say?
Well, we as a union met 2 times during the pandemic at the beach with small groups. And I would say that those trips that we made as a small union saved my life and certainly the lives of the people I've talked to. We need connection. And we need to be connected. So as far as connection goes, it was really important for me to see people I hadn't seen in a long time, and for some other folks that haven't been out to connect. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, I feel like a lot of the harm reduction organizations that we work with were very quiet during the pandemic. In fact, the only things we really saw coming out media-wise, and some of the other places was National Survivors Union. I mean, we put out a methadone manifesto. We put out, don't fire your frontline staff during the pandemic. We put out all of these documents that ended up getting published and were on many, an assortment of different magazines and newspapers that I thought were really important. But day to day, drug users were not being met with anything helpful. I mean, even we had to shut our syringe access office. We used I don't know what they're called, those doors that are half doors. So people couldn't come in. They just came to the half door. So we couldn't let people come in the way we had. We couldn't hug people we couldn't do the things that we've always done that are so important to show connection and love. So when I think about the harm reduction conference and I try to think about, what are the positives? The positives are that we needed to see each other. We needed to be reminded that there is a movement, right? We stopped calling ourselves harm reductionists and started calling ourselves drug war activists because we don't feel like we are harm. We may practice harm reduction, but we are activists. And nobody was coming to save us. And unfortunately, at the track in Puerto Rico, I did not hear anything much about drug user health.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of other good messages, but drug user health is one of the most important things that we can be talking about, especially with SAMHSA creating definitions for harm reduction and it becoming more of a mainstream concept. It's important that we have discussions about it and that harm reduction groups have something to say.
Absolutely.
Maybe this is a good seg into just kind of explaining like why a drug user union is necessary and kind of talk about what that really means, because I think for listeners, when we think of a union, it's like a labor union, right? It's solidarity, it's
right,
it's power in numbers. How does all that fit into the context of drug user health, and if you just want to talk about what a drug user union is?
And can you incorporate a little history of the organization into that as well?
Yeah, I think that's great. This is something that's more important to me than anything else we could talk about. What is a drug user union? And I was in DPA. I don't know what year it was, but we had Dan Biggs there. We had all the different unions. You know, Peer Network of New York. We had all of the San Francisco Drug User Union, all of these Urban Survivors Union. We had all of these different groups meeting at DPA. And, you know, we talked and we met, but nothing much came from it. You know, as far as we left that, there, you know, we put on an action, but we left there and I didn't see a lot of movement or action. And what I knew was we needed to come together. We needed to fight together. There's not that many of us because, you know, most people don't want to come out and say I'm a drug user. And there's a reason why, because only the people that are already experiencing consequences are really able to admit that they're active drug users or chaotic drug users. Nobody would want to say that. That probably could make your life chaotic. But this is where I met Shiloh, and this is where I met some of the other folks that we ended up creating more of a national union with. And so I went home part of a union from the DPA conference. And I didn't know exactly what that was going to mean, but I was already in Greensboro, North Carolina, giving out syringes. And Dan was sending them to me. And we had a group of people that they were doing it, but it was completely illegal. And it didn't look like what it looks like now. I mean, we were breaking the law, getting arrested, giving out syringes, and driving people naloxone when they called us and said, oh my God, somebody has overdosed, please come. And we would drive as fast as we could, go and reverse the overdose and leave, because everything was so, you know, it wasn't okay to have naloxone. It wasn't okay to be doing these things. But what it did do is it opened our eyes, so we saw the overdose crisis coming as it came. You see what I mean? We saw the statistics in real time. Like, it wasn't, I mean, we saw, like, why are all, like, we've been doing this stuff for years and haven't needed naloxone. Like, we've been doing this stuff, like, what's going on? You have to take Xanax with opiates to overdose. Like, this is weird.
Right.
And, you know, so that was the beginning of our understanding that there was something very different going on with our drug supply, and that people were being negatively impacted by opiates in a way we had never seen. And, you know, we were finding people overdosed on the street. We were finding, I mean, people were calling, people were finding us, and I don't know how they even found us. I mean, I was still living in my mom's basement. So I was doing needle exchange from my mother's basement. I'm sure she didn't appreciate that all that much. In fact, we looked on the website, one of the old websites, Dave Purchase's list, And my mom's address was on there years later, and I was like, "Oh, we got to get this off.
Sorry, Mom.
We got to get this." Yeah.
It's really interesting that you brought up the myth of the rapid heroin overdose, and Edward Brecher wrote Edward Brecher, maybe was his name, from Consumer Reports, wrote an article about this in 1972 or 74, somewhere around there, when they were having what was said to be a spike of sudden heroin deaths in New York, that he eventually attributed to mixing alcohol. But can you talk a little bit about that? A lot of people think of heroin as being the one primary overdose drug, but it really they've done some experiments where they've given heroin users far excessive doses than their tolerance would suggest they could be acclimated to, and they're just fine. So you brought it up, so I'm gonna let you expand on that, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give you a scientific answer. I'm going to give you the answer that we saw, that we experienced, what I knew was that people weren't dying of heroin overdose. Occasionally, we'd give people mouth-to-mouth resuscitation for 30 minutes if it was really bad. But we didn't have a lot of crises where people were dying. When people died, it was from a mix of drugs. And in fact, our harm reduction tools, are not appropriate to use anymore, because they would say things like, you can die within 1 to 3 hours of taking the drug, right? Or go slow, or some of these things that, yeah, those are okay, but that's not suggesting that you can have one little, sugar granule of a substance and be, go out before you've taken the needle out of your arm. In fact, one of the tools that I had explained that somebody overdosing with a needle in their arm was like the movies. So that's what we were teaching before, that you had to mix the heroin with some other substance, alcohol, benzos, something like that. And that was the real risk. And the risk changed. And I'm going to tell you what, the tools haven't changed and the policies haven't changed to meet the drugs that we're dealing with on the ground today. And that's a tragedy. That's an absolute tragedy.
I agree. And I really do want to talk with you about how things are changing. That's some really good perspective on the history. And it must have just been fucking horrifying, frankly, that, suddenly all these people are overdosing and you have no idea why. And it took a couple of years for institutions to really recognize the severity of this issue and be like, even start testing for fentanyl in autopsies and that kind of thing. But tell us now how things are changing, because I'm really curious about this, and Chris probably has a really great perspective on this as well. But I'm especially concerned about xylazine appearing in a lot of different dope samples and that kind of thing. What changes are you seeing?
Well, I'm going to just be really honest with you. I don't see enough change. The fact that our national conference wasn't focused on this is a tragedy. I mean, I don't know what happened, but our methadone doctor died on this trip. And I don't know how that happened. Don't know what happened. Don't know the details. But we've got people dying, and I don't even know which ones of my friends and people that I work with are alive. I mean, honestly, I'll think about a person and I'll be like, well, are they dead or alive? Yeah, I mean, there's so many people I have lost, friends, lovers, participants. I mean, and when you start, my own daughter, she died in a rehab. When you start losing everyone you know, and you don't have any, I mean, thank God I had Dan. Thank God I had Dan, because Dan was at least sending me syringes, at least sending me naloxone. I didn't know anything about those things. So at least, I am so grateful that there was harm reductionists working to try to get some knowledge out. But how can the little bit of knowledge we got out back then,
Right.
like, we should be flooded with information about this now. The fact that people still think that they're doing, or still call the drug they're doing heroin, and it's blue, is strange to me. You know, we were going to have a Bring Heroin Back campaign, send it to the cartel, but we didn't think it would be very effective. And but
just to give context to listeners, you're talking about Dan Big, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Well, just in case anybody hasn't heard of him, I mean, I was never lucky enough to meet him personally. I know Zach has met him.
He's a Chicago guy. Was a Chicago guy, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think what I'm reading from Louise is just that the explosion of mortality is probably beginning around 16, 27, like when fentanyl really started to begin to saturate the market, that qualitatively and severely changed the drug supply and people's drug use and addictions in ways that still haven't really been appreciated at a policy level or just in like an everyday understanding level. Like, I think like these synthetic substances, fentanyl and all of their analogs, and then tranq and xylazine and these benzo analog, like that, what we're talking about today is something so different than 10 or 15 years ago. Like, if you look at the numbers, like heroin overdose deaths haven't really ever like risen that far above like 15,000 per year, deaths wise. Like it kind of hovers. And same with oxycodone. Like it spiked up there for a little bit and plateaued and has gone down. And when we're talking about synthetic stuff like fentanyl, we're talking about like 6, 7, 8 times that level of mortality. And so I just don't think it's been like accounted for and really understood how much more dangerous and deadly it is out there. Like, I think we all have seen it through our journalism, and Louise through your own experience, but I still think there's just so much that has to be said about how different it is.
Well, and if you haven't thrown away your harm reduction tools that you teach from, if you haven't thrown those away and created new tools to talk about harm reduction, then you're harming people. You're actively harming people. You are not helping them. You are harming them. It is not harm reduction. You are giving them old, bad information that is no longer relevant.
Yeah.
And that is not okay. You know, and I see it continuously. The old information, the old slogans, the old stuff, because, you know, we don't have a lot of money as organizations, and it's, you know, it's hard to create all new tools, but it must be done. And that's what a union is really about, is it's helping create these things so we all aren't reinventing the wheel.
Can you give a couple examples of some of these things you'd like to see updated? Like, what do you want to see changed? Like specifics, if that's okay.
Well, I mean, any injection drug use document, any PowerPoint or presentation about these things, like if you're talking about, all right, so if you're using the slogan, go slow, that's nice. Go slow is a good idea, but you're going to go slow and die.
I mean, I'm just thinking like fentanyl is just a completely different beast than any other like street opioid that's been popular in the last couple decades. You know, it's just like pharmacologically it's different, its properties are different, the way it's metabolized is different. Like, and Chris, you probably saw this like very much up close in Philly when that market transitioned. It must have been a complete clusterfuck.
Yeah, I mean, first we transitioned from the sourcing from Southeast Asia to Colombia, and finally to Mexico. And fentanyl in 2006, I guess, was the first time we had a flush, and then that lulled until, around 2013 when it really spiked. And then the xylazine has just really confused everything, because it takes a very high dose of xylazine to actually kill somebody. I mean, it's become very complicated for people to determine what is an overdose that requires naloxone, and somebody that just needs to be shifted or moved, and they're going to come wake up, which has happened a couple of times to me. The worst manifestations are the wounds that people see, and we're still trying to figure out the best course of action for those. I could show you pictures that would make you cringe.
I have them on my arm. I mean, this is real to me.
Are those wounds treatable? Like, can they go away? Like, I don't even know.
I don't know, and I'm working on it. But when we talk about a hospital system and a medical system that sees track marks and mistreats you, you can't even imagine how they treat you when they see a xylazine wound. It's devastating. And I have been for help so many times and had the most, just the experiences that make me say things like, I'd rather die than go to the hospital. And I hear this from other people too. I mean, our hospitals have turned into police states. If they think that you're using drugs, they mandate you to your bed, take away your phones, take away, you can't have any visitors. You can't, it's everything wrong they could do. They do. And I'm going to tell you, the real problem I see with xylazine, or something that affected me, was that I was traveling. And I did not know it was xylazine. We didn't have a drug checking machine at the time. But I thought I had found some amazing version of fentanyl that allowed me to stay well for 15 hours, or these very long times. And I don't know how it works. I don't know what in the hell is going on. I don't know why it happens that way. I've tried to talk to some epidemiologists and doctors about it. They don't listen to me much. I do have a master's degree in public health, so I that should help, but it doesn't. Like all of these things, there was positives. And when we ask people, why do you use drugs? We have to remember that there are reasons why people use drugs. And one of the reasons I was using these drugs was because I couldn't travel and be on methadone, because I was not able to guest dose. I was not able to get where I needed to be. They knew I was an advocate, and boy, they love to fuck with me. My clinic hates me. And these are not exaggerations. We have a methadone podcast where we have the woman on the phone talking to me, telling me that I've failed methadone, and that I need to, and then I need to just make sure I have naloxone and do what I need to do.
Well, they set you up to fail.
Yes, there is nothing worse than the way our if we are not investing and fighting to change methadone and buprenorphine, we are not doing anything to help what's going on. And if we don't start addressing cocaine and crystal meth and provide tools for those drugs, then we're equally shitty, because there's things you can do. I have Boost canned oxygen. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's canned oxygen. And let me tell you, if you're about to have a cocaine overdose, if you feel like somebody looks like they're going to have an opiate overdose, right before they do go out, but you don't want to naloxone them because they're still awake, and that seems kind of hateful. This Boost oxygen is amazing. It's a miracle. I'm going to write the damn company and beg them to give it to us.
They sell that in CVS and Rite Aid and places like that. I've seen that before.
Get Lowe's.
Yeah.
It saved me from a number of cocaine overdoses where I was about to seize, and you put the oxygen on your face and you blast it in you, and it's like 99.5% oxygen.
Interesting.
And, and that's all good, except I got, my partner got arrested for huffing oxygen.
What the fuck?
And of course we got out of it. But what the fuck, man? Like, this is the bizarre shit I see that's like, we're trying to find tools and create strategies to help people, right? One of the things that I would say is don't use alone and don't use at the same time. So not just don't use it like alone, like it's still no good if you both use at the same time, because you're both going to overdose in the car and then, or wherever you are, and who's going to save you?
Right.
Louise, what kind of challenges have you faced as an organizer creating a national drug users union in America that maybe hasn't been represented in other countries? Is it our puritanical mindset? Is it the size of the scope of the country and things like that?
I think it's a couple. I think it's a lot of those things. We were using GoToMeeting and Zoom and these tools before anybody else, like before the pandemic, and we were making some headways with it. We used that, and we used another platform called Basecamp, and we tried to reach folks all over the country. This is why the Harm Reduction Conference and DPA Conference and whatever conference are important, because those were our times to come together and meet, so if you weren't on the Zoom call or this call, then you could at least show up at the conference and get to know us, right? There's so many challenges because, one, we're far apart. Two, we're dealing with different issues in different states. Things are different here in 2016 is when needle exchange became legal in North Carolina. When did it become legal in Seattle?
Like 93? I don't know. Like the 90s?
Right. So we've got all these different, what's important in your local area can be very, very different, right? And so we need to be focused on local areas. We saw issues with not being diverse enough because it's hard to find people that will come out and say, I'm an active drug user. Not a great idea if you don't want, I believe that some of the things that have happened to me have happened directly because I've been on TV or I've been on the news or I've done something in the New York Times and it has upset certain people. So it's Carl Hart is one of the few people that comes out as an active user. He has a lot of privilege, but I worry about him. I worry about what somebody will be able to do to him. We are not out of the closet because we say we are. We are kicked out of the closet. You know what I mean? Like we have an illusion that we're in the closet, but the minute we get arrested or the minute something happens, it's everybody's business. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm a genius when people think I'm not using, and I'm an insane tyrant when people think I'm using. So the way I'm perceived, and a lot of times people get it wrong and I'm not using and they think I am and they'll say something or I'm using. You see what I'm saying? So it very much affects how people believe you or take you in.
And it's worth mentioning that there's people even within the harm reduction community.
Oh, very much.
It's been really eye-opening to me how, we have organizations that call themselves harm reduction organizations that will fire an active user, it's such a mixed message,
I was just going to say, we got a message from a listener who was like, yeah, I work in harm reduction. I love your show. One of my coworkers was being a chaotic user, so I got him fired. And I was just like, how do you even fucking respond to this message?
Because they're helping us. They're making sure we get help. That this ridiculous, we have a joke at the user union. You can't be part of our union until you've been fired for using drugs at a harm reduction organization. That's because people come to us because they've been fired.
And that's why people need unions, to protect themselves from their shitty bosses. So the drug user union, it's the same thing as any other union.
And I got to tell you, we've come a long way. I mean, we provide work for people, contract work. We don't have big time. We have no hardly infrastructure. We need a lot of help. It would be really nice if the harm reduction organizations would come through and really put some real effort into helping us build and helping us and mentoring us. And you know, we don't have a lot of people to look to. Our mentors are dead. You know, there's not a lot of people that I can go to that have built unions in the United States, because most of them have died because of the war on drugs and because of fentanyl and xylazine. And anybody that thinks that people will continue to use xylazine even when they know, no. Nan Golden, the photographer, was kind enough to auction off a picture, get us a FTIR machine, and the first person's life it saved was mine.
Wow.
And we had a big overdose awareness day, not this last year, but before. And we christened it.
We should get Nan Golden on the podcast. I haven't seen the new documentary yet.
I mean, honestly, I've heard some criticism of it. I haven't watched it. I love Nan Golden I love her as a photographer. She's an amazing inspiration to me, and
Absolutely.
just so incredible as an artist. But I feel like we can maybe cut this or get into it more, but I think she does a lot of too much focus on pharmaceutical companies being the cause of the opioid crisis.
Yeah, the Sackler thing, it's like, sorry, but that was very like 2006. Like, it's history. It's recent history. But yeah.
Right. But we need to bring those folks along.
True.
Right? Like instead of there being a split, like we at our overdose awareness day, we brought her, and we also brought pain patients. And they talked to each other, and Nan apologized to her for anything that she had not, you know, that's her experience. And I think we tend to talk about what we know about. And I think that there's a lot we could do. I would rather help people that are in that area struggling than people in 12-step groups causing lots of harm and trying to move them out of their thinking. That is even more problematic to me. So, you know, we have a lot of people that could be allies, but we have a hard time overlooking or educating. We love to educate people that already agree with us. Let me say that. We need to get used to educating people that don't necessarily agree with us.
I love the phrase from Freud. It's called the narcissism of small differences, right?
Yes.
Those small little differences get totally magnified and exaggerated and blown up when people probably agree on 98% of everything else, but that 2% will derail everything. And I didn't know that Nan Golden bought an FTIR machine after auctioning a photo. That's cool as hell.
Yeah, she did it so we could test drugs, and we christened it and named it Nan. So we have Nans in our office getting used every day to help folks stay alive, and I am so grateful.
There's another documentary called Love in the Time of Fentanyl, and it's all about the Canada Overdose Prevention Society and the Vancouver consumption sites.
Insight?
I don't know if it was Insight. It might have been like because there's like a satellite. There's like peer run models that's kind of drug user ran and organized, and I think that's where this one was filmed, which made it just super interesting to watch. And I wonder, like, it just sounds like the Canadian harm reduction experience and the organizing and the unions there are a model for the US in some way, but it also sounds like this country and the politics and our context is so different.
Racism. Our racist beliefs are so, what we've done to people to separate them are so exaggerated and so awful in the United States that Canadians just aren't, like, they don't have the same, like, I'm not saying they're perfect, but I am saying they don't, it's not the same. And it's very difficult for someone from Canada to understand the politics of the US South, right?
They are like light years ahead of us. And so maybe you can talk about the North Carolina politics, like trying to do what you do in North Carolina sounds like just, yeah, rough.
It's been really difficult. When my daughter died, I had worked in harm reduction for a while, but when my daughter died, I totally lost it. Here my daughter had died in a drug treatment center that did not have naloxone. And how could I have let this happen? And I was just devastated. I mean, just absolutely devastated. And anybody that knows me knows that, people use drugs for reasons. And I am sure there are many people that were like, that's the end for Louise. Like, we won't be seeing her. I mean, it's a miracle that I am alive and still able to do the work. It is the work that saved my life. And I went like quadruple time and started working more than I've ever worked. Like, no one would ever be like, oh, Louise, she's going to be a workaholic. Like, that wasn't ever going to be an issue in my life, but it actually became very real. I worked to do stuff to change drug laws and to make a change and to, make sure people heard messages and talk to folks harder than I've ever worked. And this went on for a couple of years until it almost killed me. I mean, the problem is the drug war doesn't ever stop. Like, there's no 9 to 5. Like, there's no time where I sit down and I'm like, well, we solved that. Like, I'm afraid if liberation came, I might not even notice it. I'd still be fighting. We get used to the fight. And it's only been through multiple health tragedies and difficulties that I have been forced to slow down, and the xylazine being the worst.
Yeah.
The xylazine, I mean, without the FTIR machine, I mean, they changed the batch that I was using. The other stuff it had, and I was trying to get into a methadone clinic, but it was not successful. I couldn't get over 40 milligrams. There's a filter article about it. But the thing is I couldn't do what I needed to do. So that seemed like the answer. And one day they changed the batch and it was too strong. And we had just gotten the machine and learned how to use it. And I told my partner, I need you to take this to the office and I need you to test it. There is something wrong. And before I could even, within minutes, he called and was like, don't do anything else. Don't do another drop. Flush it down the toilet. I'll be home in a second. I'll explain to you what's going on. We got a problem. And then he began to tell me all of the side effects and all of the things that were happening to me that I was seeing happen, and I just didn't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, North Carolina's been hit quite hard. Philly is saturated. You can't
Right.
avoid it. But I have been exploring what they call the dark net adjacent markets, like
Yes.
sort of direct mail. I've tested heroin that, from a broker that got it from Mexico that was 70% pure, unadulterated, and you just need some money to get it. And I got to thinking about this idea of buyers clubs, and I was wondering if that's something that's ever crossed your mind, or where you can. And these people take they take it really seriously. He gets everything tested, this person, before he sends it. Puts the results up online.
Absolutely. I think it's the only choice we have. If they're going to leave us unable to access methadone, buprenorphine's not strong enough, so it's hard to use buprenorphine, and then methadone is inaccessible and difficult. Buprenorphine's endpoint is abstinence, so they're giving 30-day shots and all of this stuff. Naltrexone isn't medicine at all. It's just like designed to make you miserable, and not be able to feel the drugs you're using. So as long as we have that, I mean, methadone is the only thing close to safe supply, and it is really hard to access. So in my opinion, a buyer's club is the only thing we have to really begin to change things. I mean, I'm about it. I think we ought to do it. I think we ought to get with, I believe with all my heart, we need to be at conferences and we need to be with the folks having meetings on Zoom or what the hell ever, talking about how to make this shit happen. And we shouldn't stop until we do, because I can't imagine being 18 and only having used fentanyl and dying the second time I used. I mean, this is not what drugs are supposed to. This is not my experience. And well, let me just say, and we have just, we have trafficking marked at 4 grams of fentanyl. I mean, everything else is like 28 grams, 155 pounds, all of these big numbers. But then you get to fentanyl and you have mandatory minimums and you have trafficking laws set at 4 grams.
Because it's a weapon of mass destruction.
Well, yeah, and if you touch it, you might just explode into thin air. It's just bullshit. We got to. What we need to do is we need to talk to district attorneys and teach them how to talk to parents who have lost their children, so that they don't end up saying, "We'll get him. We'll put him. We'll put this person in." Whatever. It's probably if these parents knew how often their own children sold drugs or middleman drugs, I don't think they'd say these things. And we have a campaign called Reframe the Blame that I encourage you to look up. Its original name, I'm going to tell you because I think it's, when we were first starting, the original name was My Overdose, My Bad. But we decided people wouldn't like that. and we changed it to Reframe the Blame. So it is
I like the first name. It's cheeky, but yeah. I can see it coming off as a bit too sardonic or something. My bad.
Yeah, we weren't going to risk it.
Or cavalier, maybe. I did want to talk about this, though. I know that you've sold drugs to supplement your drug use, right? And there's sort of this thing that we really want to emphasize this on Narcotica, that the line between drug seller and drug user is really, really blurry.
It's as blurry as it gets. I mean, when I started running the needle exchange, I swore that I would not touch or middleman or do any of that, because I feared that I would disrupt or get a conspiracy charge around the needle exchange. And then we'd have problems that it would actually harm the community of needle exchange. So I did this before I was ever running a needle exchange, but I know lots of people in giving someone drugs is a kindness. Or selling someone drugs is a kindness. If I ask you for drugs and you won't give them to me, we're probably not going to be friends for very long. You can just hear older women being like, "Oh, I have a Percocet upstairs if you're in pain." Like, why is that okay? But these other things just aren't. Or I have an Adderall that's the exact same thing as crystal meth. But I mean, if I give you crystal meth, then boy, oh boy, I am, America's #1 predator. I might even classify as a super, all these things. But selling drugs, if you are not selling an enormous amount of drugs, you are not hitting the place where you make enough money to be selling drugs. Like, these are just ways to make a little bit of extra dollars, support your family. If you already have a felony, I mean, I have a master's degree and I don't think I'm qualified to work most places because I have like 15 felonies, and I would certainly rather somebody middleman something than go rob somebody. I mean, when you're dope sick, you need money, and this is a way to make money. And nobody in my world, I've never seen, and maybe I'm wrong, But I've never seen anybody try to force anyone else to take their expensive ass drugs. Please take my drugs. I want you to try this. People don't try to get people. In fact, what I see most often is people not wanting to let people try a drug that they have that they've never had because they don't want to be responsible for them getting introduced to it. And so it's tricky.
Yeah, there's a bit of community responsibility with drug selling, and a lot of drug sellers can be considered sort of like freelance pharmacists. A lot of them do drug testing. A lot of them do make sure that their product is pure. They do a lot of harm reduction is the word. Because they care about their clients, and no one wants anybody to die from this. But
yeah, I'm going to tell you, when my daughter died, one of the people that sold me drugs wouldn't come over, and they just said, "Louise, I'm worried that you're not okay. I'm worried that this is not a good time for you to do this." And that was like, the people that I know that sell me drugs, I've known for 20 years. Like, I'm not copping on the street. These are people I've known forever. Like, they come and get their drugs tested. I tell them what they have in their drugs. They go tell the people when it's got xylazine in it, they got to get rid of this shit. Like this is real. Like, most drug sellers actually use drugs. Maybe not the kind of drugs they're selling, but as we make it more difficult to be a drug seller, we get younger and younger folks selling drugs that know less and less and less about what they're selling. And that is risky. Like, your dealer needs to know how to, just like a doctor needs to know. I mean, we didn't deal with the pill crisis and not talk to doctors and pharmacists. We can't deal with any other, an illicit drug crisis and not talk to people who sell drugs. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I was just thinking about the relationships between drug users and drug sellers, and how there's actually really interesting research on this from people like Jennifer Carroll and others who kind of document, like, anthropologically or ethnographically, that when people have a relationship with their drug seller, it kind of acts and works as some form of consumer protection. And that, like you're saying, you've known your suppliers and sellers for many, many years. You have a relationship, and say one of them were to get arrested or raided or shut down, you would then have to go maybe to someone you don't know as well, who maybe you don't know their product or they don't know you. And that introduces all kinds of risk now that
absolutely
that wasn't there. And so there's this like mechanism by which the interdiction and the drug enforcement and raiding trap houses, these drugs get paraded on press conferences as, look at all the drugs we took off the streets. Like, give us a parade and a pat on the shoulder for keeping our streets safe. And what we don't see is the back end consequence of that, which is probably more overdoses.
Yes.
In that vicinity because of that seizure, where people now are scrambling to go somewhere else and they don't know the product, and now they're at tremendous risk. And that's just kind of the drug war logic in a nutshell, is the enforcement side is driving overdoses.
Absolutely. It's a huge protective factor. And the people that I have dealt with call me and say things like, "I'm going to come test it. And then, do you know somebody that can test it after that?" And so I can figure out what I got. And, I spend a lot of time talking to people about, or the people that sell drugs, what they have, what they need to do. I mean, I remember originally when I was handing out naloxone, one of the guys was like, "I don't need any naloxone or whatever that shit is." And then about 3 weeks later, I get this hysterical phone call. It's like, "I'm at the Hotel 6. Whatever you said you had, I need. Can you get here now?" and real respect has been created for this. And so no one that I know that sells any product operates without naloxone, operates without fentanyl test strips. I encourage them all to come get their drugs tested. Most of them do. And I encourage them to call and ask me questions. And, I'm not a beacon of health. So it ends up being kind of funny. But for a lot of people, I know more than anyone else that they could ask about some of this. And so it's important that we have harm reduction groups that have knowledgeable people in them so that people are there to ask the question. I mean, we have a flyer that hangs at our window that says, "When you buy and you sell, your texts are your tell." Your texts don't ever go anywhere. We're telling people, like, don't just think you delete that and it's gone. Like, do not text, bring me a 50. Like, we know that the DEA is teaching parents to not buy Apple phones so that they can get in and get these messages and charge people with homicide. So, I mean, we have to use our imagination here. And people don't like it. I mean, people don't like you to help drug sellers. And in the South, that's directly related to racism. And it's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. I did want to ask you about this. You were on last week tonight with John Oliver about a year ago when they did an episode on harm reduction. First of all, how did that make you feel to be on there? And I want to play the clip from that.
All we do is disconnect people in the United States. So if you are found to be a person who uses drugs and needs help, we start with disconnecting you. And I truly believe that addiction is the opposite of connection. So what we do is everything wrong to help a person. We disconnect people from their families. We disconnect people from their friends. We alienate people from work. We disconnect them from community. And then we disconnect them from their freedom, finally. And when people finally have nothing left, then they will use until they die.
I really like what you said there about, how connection is the opposite of addiction. I think that really helps people understand some of the underpinnings of addiction and why it manifests. But how did it make you feel being on the show? Because harm reduction is sort of becoming a little bit more mainstream.
And we want it to be. People that say, "Oh, we don't want harm reduction mainstream." Well, why not? I want everybody using harm reduction. I don't want it to lose its voice. I don't want it to lose its power. But I damn sure want everybody to know how to use harm reduction, right? How to why it's important that we use harm reduction and not just abstinence-based programs or work programs. We're going to work it out of you. I went to a fucking cattle ranch and had to cut cow balls off when I was 30. They're not cow balls. Cows are girls, but whatever they are, steer balls. And that was supposed to cure me.
Good God.
We need to do better. We need to do better all the way around. But it was thrilling to be on John Oliver. I admire his show. He had just done a really good one on sex workers too. I felt like he did his research. They called everybody, it seemed like, to really make sure they had a handle. And when I say addiction is the opposite of connection, you know what? In the United States, we do everything opposite of what I think we should do. So you start out young, we take you away from your friends. Then we take you away from your family. Then we make it so you can't have a job. We kick you out of school, and then we take your freedom. Those things give me no reason to live. I mean, if you were listening, what I said was, doing this work kept me alive when my daughter died. That's connection. I was doing something I loved. And that made all the difference in the world. Did it make it not hurt? Fuck no, I still am a mess. But it connected me to people. It connected me to the union. It connected me to y'all. It connected me in all these different ways to the things that warm my heart. And it allowed me to fight with my community. Because I don't care if we lose the bill or lose the legislation. We need to be out there screaming, fuck this. You know? Like, it doesn't matter if we win or we lose. We win every time we get together in solidarity and say no more to this.
I agree. And that's why I see things like the harm reduction conference in Puerto Rico being so essential. I mean, obviously there was the risk of COVID. Obviously, a lot of people got sick from that event. But it was, I couldn't judge anybody for that because it was just so important for people to reconnect after being so disconnected by the pandemic. I've talked to a lot of people that are upset about the institutionalization of harm reduction. And that's because finally the federal government is starting to give money to these programs a lot more, and it's becoming a more of a mainstream issue. And I hear from a lot more people that say, like you did, that I'm not a harm reductionist. I'm a drug war activist that practices harm reduction. And I have to agree with that. Like, harm reduction is just a technology or a philosophy or something that's a tool to get us to where we want to be, which is a healthy, productive society. They're always going to have drugs as a part of it. Let's just make it so there's not drugs that fucking kill people. But the institutionalization here is concerning to a lot of people, and I recognize that. And I think that there's a lot of talk of splintering off from the Harm Reduction Coalition and some of these other bigger groups that are getting federal grants about this. And I just wonder how you feel about that.
I think we need to work with them, demand they listen to us. I am not the nicest person always to have to be in a room with when we're doing this. Like, I am not going to let us get used and exploited, and neither are the other folks in the union. When I got to a place where I felt like the union was like, when I got to a place, I don't know, it didn't take long, that like it was way too much and I was doing more than I could and not doing great at anything because I was doing too much everything. It occurred to me that we needed a leadership team. We needed a diverse leadership team made up of people around the country that could fight for a national harm reduction group. And damn it, I am more proud. If I die today, I can at least say that that's something that happened. And I believe the National Union will rock on. I mean, Aaron, Dinah, Robert, Isaac, Shiloh, Will Jr. was with, I mean, we have Katie Simon, like we have brilliance and wonderful people that I'm so glad that are with us and fighting with us. And that means that I don't have to be the mouthpiece. It doesn't have to be my experience. It's a lot of people's experience. You know, all of our experiences are different. And all of us need to fight in different ways. And, you know, we've got sex workers that use drugs. And you know what? We also have a clause that says we are all supposed to be working with some sort of mentor. And what we mean by mentor is not traditional mentor. It's somebody that maybe they don't use drugs.
Yeah.
But they'll fight with us when it comes time. They're not going to just go home at 5:00 and be like, well, day's done. They're going to come with us and they're going to put their lives on the line and they're going to put their shit on the line because they believe that we'll have a better world if we do this. And I am so grateful for the union. And we're going to keep rocking and rolling. And if you want to join our union, please do. It's easy. I mean, we've got Nick working with new members. We got so much. So I'm sure they'll put a link or whatever, or they'll give you a link.
Yes. Yeah, we'll definitely put a link to that in the show notes. We couldn't agree more. I think that, you know, the people that you listed, have nothing but respect for them, and they're doing the important work.
Yeah, I really believe in what you're doing, and I believe in unions, you know, across any field, period. And I encourage all the listeners to really check this out and see what they're up to. And if you think it'll help you, or if you think you have a role, or if you're looking for a place, this might be it. I mean, I think that's...
Or if you have a skill.
Exactly.
If you write grants, if you do some of the stuff that's, you know, we need help. We want you. We are not the union that says we don't want anybody that doesn't do this or that. We are the union that says we want to give people that are most impacted the voice, the biggest voice, but we will accept help from the folks that are willing to give us help. And there are so many of those people in my life, I could not begin to list. I'm scared I didn't list somebody from the union, and I'm worried. But if I did, I love you too. I just have a bad brain. It's the xylazine. And that might be truth. I just love the union. It's changed my life. It's made everything. It's made everything different. And it gives me a reason to want to be here. And that's for real.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And we're glad you're here and glad you're doing what you're doing. And I think whether it's in North Carolina or elsewhere, like, I think people organizing and connecting and making themselves heard is crucial, especially right now, like when things are so chaotic and so disconnected, and it's hard to see where this all shakes out. We're in a very volatile transitional place, and I think there's far too much mortality and sickness, and something truly drastic has to be done to begin to address this.
Yes, and we need to stop fighting about the little shit. We do. We need to find a way to come together and understand that all of our experiences are different, and it's okay for us to have different opinions and different ideas. And we need to learn how to do that. We need to learn how to do that. And we need to make sure that we don't politicize this too much, or it'll become like these other things that are untouchable. Like, we've got work to do, and we need education. We need opportunities, and we need people that are tired and ready to say no more to this. Because I know for me, I don't want to watch anyone else I love go to prison. I don't want to watch anyone else I love die. I am so beaten up by this, and so is everyone. And we have the power to make some difference, and we should.
We all are beat up by this. It's an extreme kind of fatigue. Well, Louise, thanks so much for coming on Narcotica. Is there anything else you want our listeners to know about?
Well, we have an amazing leadership team. I hope you'll have an opportunity to interview all of them at some point. There are so many people working so hard, and they can give you different perspectives about it that I just can't, because I have my own, I'm one of the older folks that, and some of the newer folks are doing some really amazing things. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful. I just want to say this. I got really sick from COVID, and I was able to call one of the union members or one of the leadership team, and they said yes, and were at my house 2 days later helping run my organization here, North Carolina Survivors Union. And that doesn't happen like that. Like, they don't think drug users do stuff like that. And it happened. And I was so grateful. And I knew that, like, I have something more than a union, more than friends. I have something really special. And I invite you all to experience it. Yeah. It is so worth it.
Truth. Very, very true.
Yeah, thank you. Where can people find you online?
Oh, we've got Basecamp. I'm going to have to send you the links. But we do have www.nc Urban Survivors Union or urbansurvivorunion.org. We're in the middle of revamping a website, but Basecamp is our link where we actually organize. And so if you want to get that, you just hit me up at louise@ncsunion.org. All right. Thank you for having me. This is such a privilege.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Great. Well, we are doing the damn thing, getting shit published, doing stuff they said we could never do. And so thank you for letting me come on and talk about it.
we'll make sure all those links and your email and everything is out there for people to find. And yeah, it's amazing to hear the work that you do, and grateful that you can tell us about it, and always learn a lot from talking to you, Louise.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on.
All right, y'all. There's a Southern goodbye.
Thanks for listening to Narcotica, an independent production by Narco Media. Co-hosted and co-produced by Zachary Siegel, Troy Farah, Christopher Moraff, and Aaron Ferguson. I'm your co-producer, Aaron Ferguson. If you like the show, you can find out more at narcocast.com and support us by joining our Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/narcotica. We are excited to announce that a portion of the proceeds from the show will now go toward the Urban Survivors Union, which is the National Drug Users Union, a group of directly impacted advocates for drug user health in America. This is the way social change happens from the ground up, and we are so excited to support this group that is doing such important work to fight stigma against people who use drugs. If you're a patron, you also get free stickers which are personally mailed to you. You can also request a shout out on the show. And now patrons can even get 30% off of merch in our new store, which is at narcocast.myshopify.com. We have t-shirts and coffee mugs, one that says "There are drugs in here," which is awesome. More stuff will be added soon. As always, we're so grateful to the folks that make this show possible. A little goes a long way, so thanks for making Narcotica happen. We're ad-free and we want to keep it that way. If Patreon just isn't for you, that's fine. You can help us out by spreading the word. Tell all your friends about the podcast, advocating for social justice and abolishing the drug war. You can also rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is by Glassboy, and Jenny Shea is the voice of Narcotica. Additional music is by myself, alias Nomad1, drug-using producer. Well, I guess that's all. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Until next time.